Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Hope everybody's doing well on this chilly January day. It's sunny here. It's pretty, but it's still a little cool and damp. I am off the mountain today, and it brought to mind an interesting subject, something I don't normally think about a whole lot in January, and that is winter wildcrafting. Now, see, in the mountains of North Carolina, at least the area where I live, winters are pretty severe, actually. I mean, they tend to be a lot like winters further north, you know. I mean, we'll get down to minus 10, minus 20 degrees, 50, 70 mile per hour winds, ice and snow up to your knees. It's not fun. So, unless you have a good reason to be out in the woods, generally it's a lot nicer to be sitting at home in front of a nice roaring fire, or preferably a wood stove, actually. Yeah, if you ever try to heat your home with a fireplace through the winter, you're not going to enjoy that very much. Um, but there are some things, yeah, there's some things you can find in the mountains actually easier in the winter because the leaves are off the trees. All right, so you're thinking things that grow on trees. Um, that brings up the interesting topic of chaga. Now, believe it or not, chaga does actually grow in the Appalachian Mountains, southern Appalachians, I guess I should say, because people are used to looking for it further north. Uh, Bottom line, though, is just basically nobody had ever heard of it until about 10 years or so ago, and still most people don't think to look for it. I admit I have not found very many. But according to a field guide I have, Mushrooms of the Southeastern United States, I believe is the title, they say it's common in our area. So I'm going to have to get better at looking for these. And the philosophy that really seems to work so far is, all right, if it's wintertime and the leaves are off the trees and you got a backdrop of white snow and ice and you're looking for a jet black, charcoal black growth on a birch tree, which tends to have a silvery, a bright bark anyway, I like to go out and find a spot where I can look at a stand of birch and take some binoculars and just look up there and see what I can spot. You know, according to what they're saying now, chaga has all kinds of medicinal benefits. It's like the miracle mushroom of the day. Um, like I said, this was not something that we used until very recently, but I've come to like it quite a bit. Uh, they say that it's good for cancer, anti-cancer. It's full of antioxidants. It's good for immune support, may help with diabetes. It also makes just a really tasty drink. I mean, just powdered chaga and hot water makes sort of like a coffee mocha type flavored drink. Back when the virus hit, oh, I guess I'm talking about like maybe last April, almost a year ago now. Could have even been February when I started thinking about this. Let's just ballpark it March. I thought, well, I need to make up an antiviral compound that would help me get through this. And wouldn't it be great if I was stuck in quarantine for a while, if I had a little extra wine on hand? So I made up a pine needle, juniper berry, or cedar berry, actually. It's Virginia juniper, eastern red cedar. And chaga and reishi, just dried mushroom powdered wine. Added a little cinnamon for flavor. And all I did is I just boiled all that down, put in about 5 gallons total water, maybe, I'm thinking about I did about 12 pounds of sugar and some yeast, and just let it ferment off. It made a really tasty wine. It was slightly sweet, it was piney, it was woodsy, it really had a good woodsy flavor. And I didn't get sick. In fact, the whole time I was sipping on that wine, I didn't even have a head cold or anything. That's pretty good. Now, my dog's trying to dig through the floor over there. He thinks this whole room is a bed. So if you hear anything, that's what's going on. Um, so anyway, that's the other thing. Actually, two of the things I just mentioned that you are really easier to find in the winter. Reishi. Reishi is the Ganoderma. It's got a varnishy burgundy cap and a white underside, whitish underside, I guess you'd say, more beige. You're looking up in the trees, usually looking around hemlocks, and that's going to be easier to spot in the winter. There's just less confusing your vision. Now, I mentioned pine. Now, pine needles are best gathered in the spring. Pine is actually strongly medicinal. White pine is what I normally use, so I've used loblolly pine. Um, but I've got a nice white pine tree in my yard, and let's see. Well, all right. Native Americans used it as an antiseptic and for wound healing, skin complaints, burns. But I would normally use it, like I said, for immune support. It's especially good for sore throats and coughs. And, like when you have a real actual cold, I mean, not just a little virus that makes you feel lousy, but when you actually feel chilled and cold, there, the pine is very heating. It just seems to warm you up real well. It also is great for a sore throat. A tea made out of pine needles, or, and this is what you have access to in the wintertime, is, you start getting that bad head cold, and you get a sore throat, and it can even turn into strep throat, and you're snowed in, and you don't want that thing to get out of control because a chronic strep throat can really be deadly. Or, I mean, a chronic sore throat, especially if it's strep throat, can really be deadly. That tissue will get what they call boggy, and the inflammation does not want to go back down. It can get bad real quick if you don't have any way to treat it. And so, in an emergency in the wintertime, I'll go out and I will cut off a branch of that tree, or usually an ice storm is not going down. And you just peel back the bark off of it. It's the inner bark and that sap layer, the sap wood right up next to the bark. You can take that and make a tea out of it. And a hot tea with that, it's a wonderful remedy for a cold. Now, the only concern really is that too much of either pine or cedar, juniper, anything like that, balsam, you name it, can irritate the kidneys. I believe it's terpenes that are in the sap. Anyway, they're tannins and they can irritate the kidneys and too if you just have too much. So with that pine wine, which is what I called it, that was kind of my play on words for fine wine. Um, I would only have a cup a day, one glass, a wine glass of that. And like I said, no problems. And my allergies were better too because I'm allergic to pine. So I was taking a little bit of pine and my body kind of got a little more used to pine. So really, when the spring pollens came out, I didn't have anywhere near as much trouble as usual. So, all right. So the cedar berries, you've probably seen your red cedar tree, or you might call it a juniper. You may have a low growing juniper bush that has berries. Not all of them do, but look for the berries. It's the same flavoring they use in gin. It's got this piney type of taste, and again, it's just great for your immune system. It's good for colds. It's good for sore throats. It's good for arthritic conditions, rheumatoid, anything that's going to have inflammation. Let's see. Officially, the leaves are analgesic, anti-rheumatic, diuretic, and febrifuge. Infusions used to treat fever, stiff necks, backaches, headaches, um, coughs, colds, diarrhea. I mean, this is Southern Red Cedar. I'm reading off the uh, Plants for a Future. Yeah, Plants for a Future. Southern Red Cedar. I mean, and this is something a lot of people just see as a nuisance. I want to cut it down. I happen to think it's a very pretty tree. I like to do what Father Nape said to do. with juniper berries as a stimulant to digestion, good for the immune system, good for the lungs, cleanse the liver a little bit. Just eat those berries, just a couple a day, because they can irritate the liver in larger doses. If I remember correctly, his formula was eat four on the first day, five on the second day, six on the third day, until you worked up to about 14 berries, and then stop. And I like that. I think it's a good thing to do in the spring and the winter. And those berries are just hanging on the trees in the winter, nice and blue and very, very tasty. I actually include them in one of my bitters formulas as well. It's a licorice, dandelion, and burdock bitters. I add mint and I add the cedar berries, and it gives it just a really good flavor. I mean, it's complex and it really gets the digestive juices flowing, and it's actually kidney supportive with the licorice and lung supportive because of that. And I really enjoy that one. I'll give you that whole formula at some point. In fact, that's featured in my class. It's upcoming on the Grow Network. It's videos of me making bitters, so you should enjoy that. Oh, I almost forgot. Now, one other thing I look for in the mountains in the winter time is old man's beard. Old man's beard is also called usnea. It's a really interesting plant. It's a lichen. It's one that is commonly used in Chinese medicine. It was also used by the Native Americans. It especially grows in the Pacific Northwest, but the mountains of North Carolina are so very much like the Pacific Northwest. It's like super common here. And in the wintertime, when the leaves are off the trees, I can gather all the old man's beard I want to get. Let's see, TCM Chinese medicine says it's cooling and drying. It has the ability to clear heat, move damp, and resolve toxicity. It contains usnic acid, which is an ingredient in creams, powders, toothpaste, mouthwashes, deodorant, hair shampoos. It's a preservative, promotes excretion within the kidneys and the urinary tract, which helps support a healthy immune response. Anyway, it's good for your immune system. It's good for your respiratory, urinary, and all your mucous membrane. So it's a really good thing to have, and it's just a lichen. It's like a hairy moss that grows on trees, and it's also antimicrobial. So it's a good one to have, especially in this time of year. But like I said, I went off the mountain. And I'm down in the sand hills of North Carolina, pretty close to the South Carolina line. And this is a different world. I don't even think they've had a hard freeze yet. Maybe one very light dusting of a flurry of snow, and that's about it. If they had gotten below, I don't know, 29 degrees, I'd be surprised. So the leaves are off the trees mostly. Of course, this is pine, so it's kind of hard to tell. The leaves are off the oak trees, except for the live oak. So again, it's hard to tell. But the uh, the plants are still, for the most part, fairly vibrant. And I was just looking around, and it hit me, any time of year, it's just really good to get out there and look around and just see what's available, because there's always medicinal herbs within our reach. Well, I mean, they're more depending on where you are in the winter, but they're there. Trust me, even if you're in the desert's full of medicinal plants. First thing I happened to notice was, well, a lot more of those eastern red cedars, and those are really good. But then I noticed that the prickly pear cactus still had the fruit on it. Now, I happen to love prickly pear fruit. It's kind of like a seedy kiwi. Now, that's not the medicinal part of the plant, actually, but I'll just tell you about this real quick. This is one you can forage. In fact, when my ancestors settled, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, back in the, late 1600s, prickly pear was one of the plants they planted for food. So around a lot of old homesteads, you're going to see prickly pear cactus. I grew real well around the coast. But here in the Sandhills, I mean, it's January 10 as I'm recording this, and nice purple fruits are still hanging on there. The way you want to do it is I will, gloves are okay, but what I usually do is grab a thick towel, usually a rag I keep in my truck, and a knife, and just kind of wrap the towel around my hand, grab hold of the fruit with the towel, slice it off with a knife, drop it in a bucket. You can fill a bucket like that within, I mean, a 5-gallon bucket from one plant, usually one big stand of prickly pear cactus, can be filled in like 15 minutes. So it's good if you're kind of grabbing and going, if you know what I mean. And to eat those prickly pear cactus, take a pair of tongs and hold them up and use a plumber's torch, just a little propane torch, or you can use the gas burner of a stove and burn the spines off. Because once those cactus spines get into your fingers, they are almost impossible to get out. Another thing that grows around here that fruits a lot earlier in the season is what they call the Indian fig cactus. Tastes are almost identical. Those nice purple fruits. You can seed them and do, give them a taste. They may need a little shot of lemon juice. They may need just a pinch of sugar, but usually a little lemon juice and salt will bring out the flavor like crazy for a dessert. You can make a sorbet out of that. I mean, you can crush it up. What do they call it? Granita. You crush up the juice, put it in the freezer. When it just starts to thaw, take a fork and kind of rake it up and get it all fluffy. Put it back in. Do that a few times. Just a nice dessert on a hot late fall day, like you might get if you're down toward the coast fishing in October. That's when they're just starting to get ripe. You can crush them and make wine out of them. It's very, very high in antioxidants. But the paddles, the pads, are known as tunas in Mexican herbal medicine or Mexican grocery stores. A lot of people eat them as food. It comes from the name for the prickly pear cactus, which is actually Optunia. So they call the pads tunas. Now, what's interesting about this is the juice from those pads actually lowers lipids in arteriosclerosis. They're very strong in bioflavonoids. They can heal internal bruises, but the most important thing is this is probably the most effective natural food medicine for diabetes and pre-diabetic conditions. This isn't like, I mean, this is like when type 2 is just coming on, you're starting to put on a lot of weight. This prevents the spikes. It basically balances out the blood sugar so you're not getting highs and lows, the big dips. Over time, that can really help with insulin resistance. Now, obviously, that's not a cure-all. You're going to want to exercise. You're going to want to change your diet and the whole bit. But this is medicine that is just sitting beside a lot of driveways in the southeast, and people are usually complaining about them, trying to cut them out because they're tired of getting stuck with them when they're trying to mow their grass. I mean, this is one of those useful ones that, I mean, I was just driving down the road the other day. I was on, seems like, cannot remember if it was Highway 5 or Highway 15, 501 in the center of North Carolina, and I happened to notice one of those, there was a taco truck. Of course, I love tacos, so I'm always going to notice a taco truck. And beside it was probably a 200-year-old stand of prickly pear. I mean, it was, made a neat picture there, that taco truck and all those people standing in line by this big, huge stand, but no one was eating the fruit. There was probably, I would say, 300 pounds of fruit just sitting there free for the taking and no one touching it. You know, we gotta rethink the way we're doing things. These were Mexicans standing in line. They should have known better, if you'll pardon a little generalization there. What was the next thing I noticed? Well, pokeweed. The poke has been winter killed. It's died back, but because the weather is so mild around here, you can still easily identify a poke plant if you're used to looking for it. This is like the ideal time to dig poke roots. If you don't know about poke, I mentioned it in another show, but the root is so powerful. It can actually be a little toxic in too high a quantity. Um, in fact, they say the whole plant is poisonous, but you would have to consume more than you should. Um, so it's a lymphatic. It cleanses the lymph system. It can make you throw up if you have too much. But let me just pull up a reference here, and I'll tell you everything the root is good for. It contains potent anti-inflammatory agents, antiviral proteins, substances that affect cell division, and that makes it useful in cancer treatment. Perhaps, again, I never recommend anything. All parts of the plant are toxic in excess, causing diarrhea and vomiting. The remedy should be used with caution and preferably under the supervision of a qualified practitioner. Absolutely. I'm not going to dispute that. It is purgative. The root is used as an anodyne and anti-inflammatory. The root is taken internally in the treatment of autoimmune disorders, especially rheumatoid arthritis. It's good for tonsillitis, mumps, glandular fever, and other complaints, including swollen glands. chronic cataract, that's congestion, and sprains. It can be used topically for things like sprains and bruises and such. It's been used in the treatment of cancer, hemorrhoids, and tremors. Poultice of the fruit is applied to sore breasts. The tea from the fruit is used in the treatment of rheumatism, dysentery, etc. I mean, this is powerful medicine. And again, it's considered a weed that most people would just spray with Roundup if they get the chance. If you see it in the wintertime and you can tell it was a nice, big, healthy plant, that's a wonderful time to dig the roots. In the spring, I eat the leaves. You know, the berries do have some medicinal properties, but that root, this is a great time to dig it. Next, what did I see? And again, I'm just wandering around, literally. Mistletoe. Now, I got to just go ahead and get this out of the way because if you ever go down to the sand hills, I mean, between, say, Moore County and Scotland County and going down into probably around Sherall, South Carolina, McBee, the Sandhills, I think what is Sandhills State Park or National Forest? I can't remember. It's right outside McBee or McBee, as they often say around there, which is a big peach producing area. You will see mistletoe everywhere. All right, don't bother with it unless you want it for decoration. The medicinal mistletoe is European mistletoe, and it's a great herb. I mean, it lowers blood pressure and heart rate, eases anxiety, good for panic attacks, headaches, improves concentration. You know, the Druids thought it had magical properties. It's used in the Swedish bitters. American mistletoe is actually almost the opposite. While it does have some medicinal use, it is so extremely poisonous that some of the first documents, King's King's Medical Formulary, I think, was like 1890, and it was documented long before then. I mean, he's often, referencing things going back to the 1700s of kids that would eat mistletoe and die, or full-grown adults who would eat mistletoe and die. American mistletoe increases blood pressure. It increases muscle contractions. While it could be used in very small doses for things like uterine hemorrhaging, it can kill you. And a pregnant woman should never even go near it. Okay. Yeah, a beautiful plant, wonderful plant. It's one of those that I love to see, and I mean, in my grandparents' house, there's always some mistletoe hanging up around Christmas time. Don't eat it. Don't do not confuse those two. Uh, Another one that was kind of fun to get to know down here was Carolina sand cherry. I kept seeing this tree, and it's just such a pretty tree. Again, not useful for medicine, but I'll just mention it because it could be a great little landscaping plant. It's maybe a 30-foot tree. The bark looks like magnolia. It's kind of got that mottled light gray. It stays evergreen through the winter, and it has these really pretty black cherries that just hang all over it that the birds absolutely love. So if you wanted a winter evergreen that isn't like a pine, but is actually a hardwood, this could be great in a landscape, and it'd be great to feed the wild birds and critters through the wintertime, and should probably be utilized as such. But it's another one. It's almost considered a weed. People don't recognize it and they don't like it. Don't get that. Um, I mean, I get it with privet. Privet can be a pain, but the Carolina sand cherry, really nice, and apparently it would grow all the way up into New England. So yeah, that's one you might want to look into if you want to propagate some plants and sell them, because that would be a nice landscaping plant. But back to herbs, this one is so cool. I mean, spotted wintergreen. I kept seeing this. I'm like, what is that little plant? The leaves are just interesting wintergreen leaves, that dark green, almost bluish green, with these white veins and mottled patches. And I look at that, is that Pipsissewa? Well, I looked it up, and yeah, it is a Pipsissewa. It is spotted wintergreen. It's officially Chimaphila maculata. It is analgesic, antibacterial, astringent, diaphoretic, diuretic, febrifuge, rubefacient, stimulant, and tonic. It's a powerful little plant. The plant has an antiseptic influence on the urinary system, used in the treatment of cystitis. Um, Good for rheumatism and colds. The root of the plant, and most people only gather the leaves, but the whole plant is medicinal. The root can be used to treat pain and can be used as a wash on ulcers, scrofula, and cancers. And, again, they're usually talking cankers, they're talking sores, they're not, but, I don't know if it works on skin cancer or not. Usually in an herbal book, when you see cancers, they mean cankers. All parts of the plants can be used, but the leaves are the official use in the old pharmacies. It is such a great little plant, and again, it's one of those that comes up as a weed in the sandhills. I spoke with a friend in Canada. She says she can find it toward the coast. It's a different wintergreen that grows up there, or a different Pipsissoa. Um, but it likes the really acidic soils, and this soil around here is crazy acid. So this stuff springs up, and people around here just want to spray it with Roundup or dig it up and put grass in its place. Another just wonderfully valuable herb, absolutely being wasted, and it's everywhere around here. I mean, how cool is that? You don't see that in the mountains. And here's one you might not think about. English ivy. English ivy was used as an ornamental plant. It got out, it ran amok, and it's now considered invasive. English ivy actually has herbal properties. Traditionally, it's used internally for liver, spleen, and gallbladder disorders, good for gout, arthritis, rheumatism, and dysentery. And it's also kind of interesting because it's connected by lore, I would say, to mistletoe and holly. This was one of the major herbs of the Druids. They saw ivy and holly, and one as being male and one as being female, and they were all part of their medicines. But it's also used for burns, wounds, calluses, all kinds of inflammatory disorders, parasites, rheumatic complaints, and phlebitis. So English ivy is one that, again, everybody's trying to eradicate, and we could use it, use the weeds. What else have I seen down here? Oh, wow. Oh, well, holly. Okay, I just mentioned holly. Holly leaves are used to be used a lot more in herbal medicine than they are now. I had to grab Maud Greaves' Modern Herbal for this one, and she said the leaves were formerly used as a diaphoretic. An infusion of them was given in catarrh, pleurisy, and smallpox. They've been used for intermittent fevers and rheumatism. They have febrifuge and tonic properties. Um, oh, and can be used for malaria where cinchona, the quinine, has failed. It has a bitter principle, good for the liver, and it's been uh, used for jaundice because of that. Now, the berries are totally different. The berries are a violent emetic and purgative. In other words, don't eat these unless you want to be running to the bathroom. But sometimes in emergencies, um, you want to be running to the bathroom. I mean, if you've eaten something poisonous and you got to get it out, or anyway, Culpeper. That's the Culpeper's herbal is the old English, I guess, authority until Miss Greaves came along. He said the bark and leaves are good to use as fomentations for broken bones and such members as are out of joint. He also considered the berries to help with colic. So, don't overlook holly. Put it on your list just to explore. I'm probably not going to pick any because I don't like violent purgatives and emetics. But I might grab a few leaves and see if they come in handy someday. Um, oh, and another one that I just saw everywhere down here, Oregon grape. Now, Oregon grape and barberry both grow in the mountains, but down here, man, they are everywhere. I think Oregon grape must really like this climate because people planted them, I think, is probably a hedge, and the birds scattered those seeds. And I am spotting little Oregon grapes in the woods all over the place and big Oregon grapes. And I may grab a few roots while I'm down here and come back later in the year for the leaves. Now, the interesting thing about Oregon grape is the leaves are just as useful as the root. So is the bark. For some reason, the root is all you ever see sold. But the leaves are actually my preference because one, you don't have to kill the bush, and I actually think they have a little more potency to them. But this is probably just my opinion. I have no chemical way of proving this. I believe leaves are stronger from a plant when they're getting more sunlight and the days are long. So I'll wait and come back and grab some leaves. And hey, if I'm here at the right time, maybe I can get some berries. People tell me they make wonderful jam and wine. Um, I haven't tried them. I was always told they were just too sour and bitter to try. But hey, I'm going to give it a shot this year if I can get a bunch of them. Other plants I won't go into detail on, but there's tons of magnolia down here. There's tons of dogwood, and there's absolutely tons of live oak, blackjack oak, water oak. I don't even know how many like little scrubby oaks are growing down here, plus these nice, beautiful live oaks. All these are astringent, and you may remember that Howie recommends in his smoking mixtures to use dogwood bark. He also recommended pipsisselis. A couple things here you can relate to last week's show. But all those are just really strong astringents. They're going to be good for sore throats. They're going to be good for, a variety of things. And that actually reminds me, I mentioned pine. I was, I'm going to say maybe 4 months ago, five, I was moving a washing machine, very heavy washing machine by myself, and taking it upstairs on a dolly, and got a little overbalanced or whatever, and the dolly kicked out from under it, kicked back on me, and hit me straight in the shin. Gave me probably a little bit of a fracture, swelled up all, but it really just split my leg open. And I mean, it bled and it bled and it bled. And after 24 hours of just sitting there trying to wait for this thing to scab over, I finally hobbled out and got some pine pitch. Pine pitch, from the pine trees, this happened to come from a loblolly. It is wonderful stuff. It's what the pine uses to heal its own wounds. It's dried sap. Took that and just kind of crushed it up with my fingers into a fine powder. Well, actually, no, I remember I crushed it up with the back of a spoon into a dish, into a fine powder, and mixed that in with a little comfrey salve and rubbed that in there, and the bleeding stopped almost like miraculously. The bleeding stopped. It formed one little drop of blood on top that just sat there till it dried. And then the comfrey started closing up that wound. So don't overlook the pine tree. It's powerful medicine. Oh, the other thing I saw that I've just harvested a few just to kind of chew on a little bit. Rose hips. Rose hips, I usually leave them for the animals because they're one of those berries that stays on through the winter. And, I will use rose petals more in medicine than I will rose hips. Very high in vitamin C. Really good, for colds and aches and swellings and sprains and arthritic complaints and anything you would want, a nice, slightly astringent. All rose families are astringent, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. You can use rose petals for poultices. You can use rose petals for a variety of beverages. They're great in salads. They're edible. The rose family is the same as the apple family and the blackberry family and so many others. And, usually they're quite edible and quite good. Actually, that Carolina sandjerry is in the rose family, but its berries aren't edible, so don't always think they're edible. Always look it up. But yeah, anyway, the rose hips, they make a wonderful tea. You get them in the wintertime. If you grow dog roses or Rosa multiflora, just the wild roses. They usually have some nice hips. You can dry those out. Now they have these little prickly hairs inside of them. You don't want to just chew them up and eat them because that's actually what they used to make itching powder out of, and you don't want to get that in your throat. And some people say that they don't even notice it in their throat. They notice it on the way out, if you know what I mean. So don't do that. But making a tea or earlier in the season, you can do a rose hip jam if you strain those out real well, through a tea strainer or maybe even something a little bit finer. But like I said, I usually just snack on a few, chew them up, get that nice acidic, bright, slightly sweet flavor, and then spit them out and leave them for the animals because the birds and such don't have any trouble with those little hairs. Those are a few things to think about. There's never a bad time to be outside, unless it's inclement weather, of course. There's always a good excuse to be in the woods. And I hope this gives you a few things to think about Look around your area today. You know, I live in a pretty unique area. North Carolina has very distinct different regions. I can often go from one season to the next just from driving a couple of hours. Tell me about your area. What's growing there now? What can you find? If you got a question and you don't recognize something and you think it may be, send me a photo or ask me a question. I may not be able to answer it, but I can probably point you in the right direction. I got tons of field guides and tons of herb books. I basically read an herbal a month. So, every year I'm reading 12 herbals and probably as many field guides and who knows whatever other books. I'm a plant geek, you know. So if you got a question about something, let me know and I'll help you out if I can. And if I can't, I'm not going to BS you because I don't want you to get poisoned, obviously. So y'all have a great week and, drop me a line. Let me know how you doing. Talk to you later.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.